who is a fintech connector, Piotr Szczepanik from Microsoft, Christy Kurwitz from Terra Ventures, Ian Kalla from Bankish, Jaroslaw Swierczewski, banking digital transformation leader. I hope I didn't mess up so much the names and how they sound. Welcome on stage, guys, and the floor is yours. Enjoy yourself. Here's one microphone. There's one for you as well.
Thank you very much for a warm welcome. Hello, everyone. My name is Aleksandra Kopec. I'm a lawyer specializing in fintech industry, and I have a great pleasure to moderate a panel titled Fintech 2.0 and have a discussion with outstanding panelists. And before I ask you to introduce yourself, please let me make a short introduction to the topic, because the term Fintech 2.0 might not be clear to everyone. The term fintech doesn't have its own one universal definition. However, in everyday language, fintech is new financial industry that applies technology to improve financial activities. In scientific publication, we can read that the term fintech was first used in early 90s. But since that time, the digital innovation has been still radically reshaping the provision of financial services, and solutions that we considered highly innovative or revolutionary then, nowadays, mostly seem to be rather outdated. That is why we can hear more and more often that fintech is a word of the past, and now is the time for Fintech 2.0. And now I would like to ask each speaker what Fintech 2.0 means to you. I would like you to say a few words about your professional experience and knowledge and your understanding of this term. Ladies first, so Christy, could you start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, first of all, hello everyone. Good morning. Great to be here. Just quickly on my background. So the bigger part of my career, I've been working in international VCs, spearheading deal flow and operations. And most of these funds have been generalist funds. So I've seen startups across different industries. And after speaking with tons of different startups and seeing their solutions, I think Fintech 2.0 for me is really the embedment of fintech into other industry verticals. And I think that's been super interesting to see, because when we first looked at Fintech 1.0, which primarily focusing on enhancing the already existing financial solutions, now to Fintech 2.0, that will be in our everyday lives, from insurance to HR, to digital wallets, neobanks, everything. So I think for me, that's really the essence of Fintech 2.0. And these solutions are the epitome of equality and access overall. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Piotr?
Hello, everybody. My name is Piotr. I work for Microsoft. I take care about connection between clients, the big financial institution, and ISVs and global ISVs. So I have pleasure to work with the clients and with the partner, and also with the fintech. And in the few words, the essence for me is that the Fintech 2.0 is a kind of the synergy, the full synergy between banks and the startups fintech. This is the way how banks now can add the value to the chain, and how they can be closer to the client. This is the biggest challenge now on the market. So that's one point.
Thank you very much. Ian?
Yeah, thank you. So we with Bankish, what we focus on is core technology provision for financial services companies. And from that point of view, and also having been in the financial services industry myself for quite some time, I'm really driven by the efficiency. in those fintech innovations that actually comes to the market and makes a change for everyday people's lives. And this is the point at which I believe today's fintech is on the right track, but there is a lot to learn from already established new fintechs and new age sort of financial services companies. Take those, let's say, lessons learned into a new perspective and build a fintech 2.0 on that. And I think that's what it means to me the most.
Thank you. And last but not least, Jaroslaw.
Hello, good morning. Sorry, I really wanted to be with you, but unfortunately, sometimes things happen. I'm responsible for optimizing transformation of banking sector in EY. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to build and transform a couple of banks in my life and live across the world as well, so gathered some experience. Fintech 2.0, for me, it's a peace of mind. It's a marketplace where I come to, and I'm able to do all the services I wish for. So this is my idea. I don't want to be have any limitations. I don't want to be limited to one service only. When I come to something, I want to be able to perform anything I wish for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's fascinating that each of you has its own definition of this term, but at the same time, these definitions are consistent and complementary, and I think that's a very good start for our discussion. And now I would like to ask Ian, what are the trends and new customers' demands and needs on banking services?
I would even take it a bit further than just the banking services. I would say that it's in the financial services in general, and this is a often seen misconception in my eyes that the banking sector is what we're talking about when we're thinking about financial services. But in reality, in the background, there are numerous, and I would even say in terms of actual legal entities, there are so many more financial services providers that are non-banks and that are vital to those ecosystems. Some more in some markets than others, but still a very vital point as per such. And well, yeah. What are the most, let's say, well seeable customer demands or needs? Is, I would say, point first already bring out 1.5 years ago. After the first biggest implications came in, we actually saw, and I can bring a case study on this. One of our then potential customers that we were talking with on Bankish's side, and we were offering our software as a service core banking technology to them. At that point, they were saying that no, we don't need something like that. We're currently fine with our legacy technology, and yes, they recognized that it was legacy, but it was working until springtime 2020, when all of a sudden they had to move completely to digital channels, working from home offices, and that's where the problems started happening. In very quick succession, in a couple of weeks' time, they already came back to us and said, okay, what is it going to mean for us to actually transform? And I think that a lot of financial institutions actually need this full-blown transformation in order to make amends with those new customer demands. It's really a difficult point for them because there are not that many quick fixes that can actually offer solutions to that. So customers expect digital environments, they expect frictionless onboarding, they expect very seamless services with self-service, they expect it to be fast, convenient, everything on those lines. And when it comes to the general, let's say, level of financial services as of today, they oftentimes are not catered for in that sort of sense.
I'm also wondering how new technology can transform credit products, because there has been a recent debate about that. Could you share with us your experience in this topic?
So credit products, as per in transforming credit products then?
Yeah, like a digital transformation of credit products.
Well, it works pretty much the same way as anything else as per such. I would say that when it comes to the technology, it's actually quite simple. You need some couple of modules which help you to handle the business internally. From the financial institution point of view. You need something to be able to handle your products with. And at that point, what is the main challenge actually on the technology market in that point is that oftentimes they are not able to, the technology providers are not able to provide such technology which enables the financial institutions to cater for their products today and also in the future. So they are actually not in full control using that technology over their own products or product development for that matter, and bringing on new products to the market. And then this is where you just have to build your infrastructure in that sort of a way that it allows for your future growth as well. And this is where I believe that many financial institutions actually get stuck in.
That's true. Thank you, Ian.
Pick me as well, if I could chip in as well.
Of course, Jaroslaw, please.
So this is not only this. I fully agree with Ian, but there are additional things. Credit loans are very expensive to the banks as well. So, I mean, making them, offering them traditional way. So that's why we have AI. That's why we have new tools to use and to make sure that they are being offered very optimal way, so we don't overpay for them. That's why you can see the rise of the fast credit and all the fintechs which are offering this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piotr.
I think that important is to mention that we all see the boom in the buying houses, the mortgage, the whole mortgage process, especially in Poland. We see that banks were overwhelmed. And to be honest, everybody can see that there is a big space for improvement. On one hand, the technology, on the second, processes, and on the third, maybe regulation and access to the data just to speed up the process. So on one hand, yes, we have access to the technology, but on the other hand, we see that not everywhere clients, I mean banks, are agile. So there is still a lot of things to do, especially when we think about omnichannel processes, communication, and speed up the process.
Actually had a side comment on that, as yesterday we had some very good discussions with non-fintech people, frankly speaking, but it actually was the same sort of a come up that in my opinion, why are the banks reluctant to take on fintech innovation as of just today? It's not because they don't have access to the technology or they don't have access to the funds to be able to implement that technology. It's about engaging with their customer and being on the same level with the customer expectations as well. And here I'm quoting one conversation partner from yesterday, that if you change at one point a button's location on an app, it might be followed up by the customers with utter confusion, and that's where, let's say, bringing in those innovative solutions sometimes might have this sort of an effect as well. If it has a significant change to how they've been so far conducting, it can be a big sort of a problem for them.
Yeah, thank you.
Not to mention the employers as well, and employees. So basically, when you have employees trained and you change the sequence, or you change the buttons, the places, this is also confusing, and then you need to think again about costly process of making sure that your employees are trained properly.
I can see that this question was quite catchy, and I'm very happy that you're so involved in the discussion. So staying in the subject, I would like to ask a similar question to Christy. What are the trends you, as a VC or investor, see within startups focusing on fintech? What are the trends?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think reflecting kind of on our deal flow as well, of course, we see more in the payment sector, enhancing processes for merchants. We see digital wallet solutions, neo-banking solutions, and so on. But I think what is interesting, as I mentioned before as well, kind of the crossover of fintech to other industries is we've seen a lot also in the HR space, which I think is quite interesting to see. Either solutions focusing on kind of offering investing as an employee benefit, or solutions rethinking kind of the traditional payday dynamic. So instead of collecting your pay end of the month, you can collect it as you go, for each day. I think these kind of solutions will be pivotal, especially if you see the movement right now in US with the Great Resignation. There's more people on the job market than ever available to be picked up, so employers really need to think through kind of their employer branding in that sense, and I think fintech can be a big enabler for that. Then, of course, we see a lot of solution in the addressing financial literacy, which I think is a very important topic. We also see a lot in the space of investing for women because there's still a huge investment gap there. I think that's really important and it will be interesting to see how that goes forward. And then, of course, the more trendy topics around blockchain right now with everything around non-fungible tokens, the NFTs. That, again, very interesting trend because the creative industry got hit quite strongly during the pandemic. So seeing solutions that enable artists to bring their offline creations online and being able to monetize that, I think it will be an interesting one to follow. And then, of course, more on kind of on the fintech solutions, we see a lot of peer-to-peer lending, a lot of things in the environmental and social governance aspect. But yeah, there's a lot of trends across, but I'm really especially interested about the cross-border innovation.
So you think that fintech is still sexy for investors?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's definitely. I mean, if you just look at the numbers from this year, there's, I think now to date, there were over $91 billion dollars invested across the fintech sector, which I think is pretty impressive, and it's almost twice as much as last year. Then if you look at overall this year, almost 200 unicorn births, which especially shows kind of interest from the investor side. That's what we're looking for when we're investing as well. And of course, exits. There have been over 700 exits already this year, which is 25% from last year. So I think there's a big shift there, and there's definitely a big interest from the venture capital side.
Thank you. But speaking about new trends, I know that there has been a recent debate about hyper-personalization, and I would like to ask Jaroslaw, what is it and how it changes the provision of financial services?
Well, first of all, it's listening and learning the customer. So you need to become a twin of the customer to understand him, her. This is something very important. This is what we call digital feedback loop, where we all the time listen to the customer, their needs and their expectations. So the purpose basically is how to serve the customer correctly. You mentioned, or Piotr, I think, mentioned mortgages, which is quite complex credit product, is highly regulated, but we were also asking a couple of customers what they think about mortgage, and believe or not, but first-time takers, they did not care about the price of the credit. They cared about the information, they cared about the assistance, they cared about the UX and the quality of it. Only the second and third time takers, they would care about money, how much they're going to pay for this. So this is, this understanding is on the back on hyper personalization, and this is non-stop. This is ongoing process of getting to know your customer better and better.
Piotr, and what is your experience in this area?
I would add a few sentences to this, what Jarek already mentioned. So definitely hyper-personalization plus omni-channel, that's to be there where you have your clients and to serve the clients, to fully understood your client. That this is the main challenge of all banks, and really now, when we look at the processes from my perspective, at the processes of at the bank, and especially when you, for example, as a client, go through the bank and see omni-channel, how bank approach you, there is still a lot of space for improvement. So definitely, I think that the cloud lay the foundation of bringing the hyperpersonalization and omnichannel to the next level. So this is one comment. And from my perspective, the trend is data, data, data. So everything which bring knowledge to the organization it will be really great. And I would add maybe one more trend, definitely security, because when we open much more open for digital channels, then security became a bigger issue. So that's.
Yeah, I can totally agree with you, and I think this is the future. But generally, when we think about fintech, we always think about things to improve. But many of us do not realize that the Polish financial system is seen as highly innovative and well developed. And the reason of that is because of the wide adoption of mobile payments and instant payments. And for example, when I speak to my foreign clients, they often indicate that they are very impressed by the BLIK system. And Jarosław, I know that you were involved in developing this system, and could you share us your experience in this project? And I would like to tell us what determined such a great success of BLIK.
Slight correction in design process of BLIK. The development was done by Polish biggest bank plus one of the consultants they employed. But anyway, the design, yes, this is the reason. This is why it succeeds. I think that the biggest problem, maybe let's start from the challenges. You know that Polish people, we have this saying that where you have like two Polish people, there are three different opinions. So similarly to the banks, when you connect like two banks, they would always have like six different opinions. So this was the biggest challenge, to make sure that we have the network to run the BLIK with. But because it was settled by the biggest Polish bank with the biggest network of POCs, with the biggest network of partners, it was quite easy to negotiate. Then we got another biggest Polish, second biggest Polish retail bank to join us, and this was the success from the bank side, because other banks started to join the network, and the payments started really fast spread between across the customers. What is the secret behind it? Money. It's and the profit. So basically, if and this was the same story about mBank. Why it was so successful? Because we were able to share our profit with the customers, and they could understand this, and the ease of use, the everything. If you think of the functionality of the time of arranging all the system, all the services, when you want to do the payments and you can do it yourself, this is money behind it. So that's why it's so successful. It's easy to use. You can have POCs on your mobile phone. You don't have to do some. You don't have to buy expensive stuff to accept the payment and so on. So basically, I think user experience and the money and the possibility to share the profit with the customers. It's the name of the success here.
Okay, so what are the next steps? Are there any chance for the international expansion?
Oh, this is basically my dream, and this is I wish to be here with you, because I wanted to catch up some of you. Maybe we could build something like this, because BLIK in Poland is amazing, but imagine BLIK international. Imagine being able to have the functionality of foreign exchange, of let's say instant payment between different countries, not being limited to the country, to the region. So this is something which is my dream, and I think it's not only mine, but also the people who are running BLIK are also thinking about this. Of course, the infrastructure is for the time being set up for the countries. I think it's on-prem, run on-prem. So when it comes to very demanding infrastructure like international, it would need to be migrated to be able to handle all the asks and all the questions for the money for the exchange. But otherwise, I think it's ready. The technology is ready, and I think the only boundary in there would be plastic producers of plastic, let's say, credit providers who are standing behind and may do something to stop the expansion.
Yeah, well, I use Blik every day, so I really keep my fingers crossed for this project and for the expansion. And we touched the topic of the expansion into new markets. And Piotr, I know that you help large companies in implementing new technologies and scaling up their activity. So what are the main obstacles and problems?
I mean, problems with, when you connect a big company like a biggest Polish bank and some startups. So,
Exactly.
of course, bank remains bank. So this is a huge institution, and it's not always too easy to cooperate. Also, regulation and the security standards, especially when we think about cloud and when we have this discussion. This was at the beginning the kind of the challenge, but now most of the banks have the landing zones where they can use the new technology. Also, the mindset of people that, you know, when you're trying the new approach, you have to be open to not succeed. You have to accept that you can find, and everybody who take about startups have this in DNA, but not always this point of view is in a big institution. So this is the change which I see that those institutions implement now.
And who has bigger impact on setting up new trends, big companies or, let's say, high-risk startups?
This is the mixture. I think on one hand we heard about Blik. I see the movement of big another big institution which opened the API, but also this all happens because I think the market feels the breath of the startups and neobanks and many other companies which can take the profit out of the chain. So big institutions have now have a time to learn and now know how, or more or less know how to take the value from the fintech startups, whatever, just to add the business value and bring the new solution in order to attract clients, to gain information about the client and serve better and gain, of course, the margin.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. How startup can find a partner for the cooperation? Because I think this question might be very interesting for our audience.
So later on today, my colleagues from Microsoft will speak about the program for the startups, and but that's one thing. The second is that everywhere we have the ecosystem. I mean, the big companies like EY, where Jaroslaw working, also connecting to the looking for the smaller partner and do the business together, deliver together the value. Microsoft have the platform marketplace where smaller company can access the whole market, and this what I see that also mid-sized company, the partner companies like Integrator, also looking for small size partner just to grab the value. And also on the client side, we see the special units, the people who take care about those cooperation and try to make sure that they are not, scary the small companies. So everybody looking now from the bigger companies looking for, the idea to build the ecosystem. And to build the ecosystem, everybody needs the fresh mind and fresh air. And yeah, this will happen and happening and will be better and better, I think.
Thank you very much. Ian, many banks call themselves technological companies providing financial services. To what extent would you agree with that statement?
This has got to do with today's conceptions of what fintech is, and I personally see it getting divided into two main categories. The one being the financial services companies who leverage technology, and they might be new ones, or they might be some older financial services companies that have been established for a long time already, but have recently gone deeper into the technology in order to enhance their service offerings towards the customers. But I think there is a very straightforward distinction to be made in the fintech sector as per such. So if you have those financial services companies who leverage technology, could be considered fintech. I'm not 100% on or off about whether I agree with it or not, but on the other hand, you have those actual financial technologies companies. The ones that actually drive the innovation and drive the efficiency, in my personal opinion, because if you do financial technology for a number of market participants, it allows for cost saving and cost sharing from the financial services company's point of view, meaning that that the cost basis essentially, if it goes down for everyone on the market becomes highly more competitive, and also speaks to the topic which I know that Kristi is very passionate about in financial inclusion, which is not per se 100% in our platform agenda in that sort of a sense in Bankish's point of view, because we still offer technology to those financial services companies, but it also helps their customers in hand, and not only with the comfort of use, the comfort of being able to conduct digitally all of their financial claims and everything on that side, but also for the competitive market, for competitive interest rates, for financial services companies to be able to still make money on low interest rates. So that's the essence of it, and I believe that this is a far more valuable side of fintech when we talk about fintech, and especially I think this word has gotten multiple meanings because they were all looking for money at one point, and I believe that Kristi can definitely comment on that later on. But I believe that oftentimes when at least 2 years ago there were a lot of fintech companies and everyone was raising money. So I believe it's still the same too. Yeah, and this is where I believe it comes from.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I am very glad that you mentioned the topic of financial inclusion, because when we talk about fintech, we always think about, making financial services cheaper, faster, more convenient for customers, but at the same time, we cannot forget that the maturity of financial markets is very diverse all around the world, and still it is estimated that about 1.7 billion adults is underbanked. It means that they don't have any access to bank account, or this access is limited. So more and more often we can hear about initiative providing financial inclusion. So Kristi, could you explain to us what exactly is financial inclusion and why we should pay particular attention to this topic?
I think you very much touch upon why we should pay attention. I think when we look at how much fintech has evolved over when you first think financial institutions were established to, they were serving a very particular customer segment, which was a higher working class men, right? And even though we've come such a long way with the solutions and having better access to different financial products, still there's 1.7 billion people that are fully underbanked. And unbanked, actually, to be clear, unbanked means they don't have any connection to any financial institution. And I think that's really why we should focus on that. There's multiple reasons to it, why we have a situation. Of course, there's, when we look at developing countries, on statistically the top 5 countries with the least financial inclusion, we have, Mexico, we have Vietnam, Philippines, Egypt, Morocco.
Indonesia.
Indonesia as well. I'm just mentioning the top 5. But yeah, there's tons more. And even if we look at closer to home here in Europe, there's still countries like Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, and much more, where still the financial inclusion rates are lacking, even though, of course, they're higher than the countries mentioned before. But when we think of why is that, there's been tons of different studies done why. I think it really, in most cases, comes down to financial illiteracy, understanding kind of your finances and education behind that. It comes down to just not trusting the banks. I think lack of trust is definitely an issue, and that's been a big topic also in the banking industry, is how to win the trust of your customers and to retain that. And I think especially for fintechs, this will be an important topic as well, as they are going on to these emerging markets and economies. And of course, overall access, if you think of rural areas, of course now with the kind of mobile usage and network reach, there is much more people, of course, connected. But there's still certain areas where that reach doesn't go. So that's another thing. Yeah.
So what are the main obstacles in developing financial inclusions? Are these problems connected with, let's say, economic growth, or rather this is like cultural issue?
Definitely also economic growth, but I think cultural and overall countries' infrastructure. I mean, if you look at also one of the main obstacles is having valid IDs or passing any sort of kind of credit checks, which I think that's really interesting if you look at, kind of zoom into those developing markets. Let's take an example as Philippines. 70% of the people are unbanked in that country. So only 30% of the economy is participating in the kind of using the financial solutions. But if you look at the social media usage, there's 60% of the people that are registered in some sort of social media platform. So there's been quite a lot of interesting crossovers there as well into the KYC and ALM checks in those countries, and trying to retrieve data that is there compared to our traditional credit checks and what we are used to. So I think there's a lot of interesting solutions trying to address that. The same with identification. India has done a big digital ID projects. I know there's a lot of other countries in developing areas that are trying to do the same. To be able to give equal opportunity and access to these people. And if you think it from a bigger picture, when you have more people using the financial products, it's also kind of emerges the growth for these economies. Because usually when they are, have one certain checking account, they're more active in using e-commerce or having an insurance, maybe taking a loan, starting a business. So it's all like a flywheel effect overall. And I think fintechs overall play a very important part of it. But it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. So there's still a long way to go, 1.7 billion people. But I think collaboration between governments, financial institutions, and fintechs will be pivotal for this to succeed.
Yeah, we hope so. Ian, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I'd love to. In my opinion, it brews down to 2 main topics in terms of like the barriers of financial inclusion in general. Today one is being on the bank side or on the financial institution side, being able to conduct KYC, AML monitoring for that matter, and then also in case of problems, offboarding. So onboarding and offboarding topics in that sort of a sense, it's a real struggle for them, especially if what Christy already mentioned, in some geographies there are significant problems with available data and for example digital IDs as per such, or any sort of means of actually authenticating the customer as per such. And that becomes especially tricky, and the reason why there is so much in the world, at least in my opinion, in the unbanked world, is because they are not only unbanked in a particular country, but they're also foreigners in that country. So that's something that I really like that it was brought up Indonesia over on this side. So there are a lot of like foreign employees over there who also need the possibility of accessing financial services. But the problem is mainly they don't have any sort of valid ways of getting onboarded to the financial services themselves. The banks or financial institutions don't have necessary means or the data available for being able to conduct significant risk scoring on them, or to get a basic idea of what it would mean to have this person as a customer, or for a particular credit product, for example. And I think like this is what plays in really a lot over here. And something that you also mentioned on the financial literacy as per such, I believe this already hatched in our previous discussions when you mentioned mortgages, and you and Jaroslaw were talking about mortgages over here. I think it was very cool data that I hadn't heard of before, that the first and second time, let's say, mortgage buyers are not really looking into the terms as per such, and they're just more on they're getting their first sort of real estate
Education.
in place, right? Yeah, and they're learning by doing, quite literally. So that's where I believe you can also see that.
Christy?
Yeah, just to quickly add on that, I think it's important also to mention that majority of those people that are unbanked are women at this moment. So I think focusing on solutions that also provide gender equality in the finance space will be very important going forward, and creating more equal access and opportunity overall. And this is also linked to sustainable development goals globally, to eradicating poverty, creating more job opportunity, health security, and all that. So I think for startups, I think it will be an important topic to address. And the same with banks, is having maybe some more bespoke solutions addressing these issues.
Thank you very much for your comments on this topic, because I think we all need to be more focused about social affairs, and the topic of financial inclusion is particularly important for the Asian market, because as you mentioned, on the one hand, we have countries like Philippines or Vietnam or Indonesia, where the digital means of payments are still at the very early stage of adoption. But on the other hand, we have countries like Singapore or Japan that are highly innovative, well developed. So this diversity is really huge, and it clearly shows that Asian market is fragmentarized and very different from the European market. So, Jaroslaw, I know that you have a great experience in the Asian financial market, and could you please explain to us what are the main differences between the Asian and the European approach towards innovation in financial market?
Thank you. We started changing in Europe a long time ago, in the year 2000, when we, as banks, I'd say, when we started to see the customer and we started to see the needs of the customer. Asian market also it's very developed. If they wanted to have access, the success, they would have it tomorrow. But the cultural plays really a big role in that. They basically, I don't know, they recognize the customer. Even in the countries like Singapore, they copying some best practices from across the world. So they have like fast payments across the country. It doesn't matter in which bank you're banking, you will be able to transfer instantly money from one bank to another within the seconds. But, for example, they did not recognize that they need the standard of the account number. This is what we did in mBank when we knew that we giving our customers the chance to do the transfer. We started thinking of IBAN, so having standard of making sure that the customer will not change the number, and the numbers would be checked by the system, making sure that the transfer comes from one person to another. This is not happening in Singapore to the extent that for the first time from 1997 I requested for checkbook because it was like unbelievable for me that I needed to spend so much money trying to tap in, learning that different banks they have different standards, having branch number within the, and I could put like blah blah blah, put me some money Ian please and send this to tap it to my account, to my bank UX, and then it will accept it. So this is something like this is situation like this. Coming back as well to what Christy was saying about the inclusion, about the education, the banks are not recognizing, they don't want to invest in education of the people. They don't want to, they have enough, I think, at least they act like this, they have enough customer and they don't need any more problems. They pay a lot of money, as Indonesia, for example, for cash handling. I think they quite big investor for Western Union because there are many people who are working there, Indonesia, Singapore, sending money abroad using fax machines. So thanks to Western Union, we still have faxes running, and so this is kind of the technology that you look at this in 21st century and think, how come? Why don't they invest? Why don't they make things optimize?
Yeah, that's true. And I often meet with an opinion that operating in the Asian financial market is quite hard and challenging for entrepreneurs from different continents because of the different business culture. And would you agree with this statement? Have you ever noticed something like that?
Maybe I was lucky enough, but I wouldn't agree. I think first step is very difficult. They need to recognize you. They need to know that you know what you're talking about. But I was lucky enough to be, let's put it in a quote, that I was quite famous because, or maybe not me, but my babies, mBank, Telenor Banka, Multibank, they're quite famous in Asia, so everybody knows about them, and people cross my babies. So when we started talking about digital banking, they knew that they could trust me, that they could that instead of thinking what we could do, they would ask someone who knows what to do.
Lucky you, that's great. Piotr, would you like to add something?
Yeah, Jarek, the banks in this region have one thing which we don't have in Poland. I simply see a lot of implementation of core banking in the cloud, which I don't yet see on the Polish market. So I really looking on this market this way.
Yeah, but we're on the way. This is I really believe that we're on the way. We are, first of all, many of the banks will need to switch the core banking systems because it's basically the life cycle, it comes to the end. And there is no point now. We're living in such times that there are no point of investing in huge legacy systems. We need to invest as the fintechs, as banks. We need to, as financial institutions, we need to invest in capability, functionality of the channels. That's why instead of investing huge amount of money in core banking systems, paying huge amount of money of keeping the infrastructure, why? Let's downgrade it. Let's downgrade the core banking systems to the data store, to the general ledger, to the regulatory reporting, and the functionality should be somewhere else.
Thank you, Ian.
I'm super happy that Jaroslaw brought this up because it's exactly what I would say that my main message in many of the events actually is. It has got a lot to do with the risk basis, and we all know that choosing a new core banking solution or any sort of like a significant effect technology change within, especially as big of an institution as bank is a very hard process. It's a very difficult decision to be made. It's heavily got to do with sustainability and compliance. So in that sort of a sense, it is understandable that they treat many of the fintechs with a certain level of reservation. But I think that time is about to be over, or at least it should be, because there have been case studies already on the market, and this is where, when you were asking before who really drives the innovation of the fintech world, today it's the non-bank financial institutions, but I think it's about time that banks actually take the lead over here as well. Today, so far, they have been the ones that are doing this because, quite simply put, they haven't had the tens of millions and years to conduct digital transformation. They just don't have it in their resources, the non-bank financial institutions. So they have been looking for more efficient ways of doing things. And this is where the fintechs really come in and play with their innovative solutions. Now, the banks so far, in terms of compliance, in terms of regulatory needs that they had to be going through all this, it sometimes is, and for the past couple of years we've been seeing it sometimes is a lot simpler to be making a decision for something that you know that is working, even though it has a cost base of 1,000%. Simply put. And on this and yeah, too as well, I actually found it quite surprising that that in Poland you're currently struggling with, as I understand, with cloud, moving to cloud as per such. Or, well, anyways, from that point of view, moving to cloud as a bank or any sort of a financial institution, I mean, there is also a good way and a bad way of doing this. And as Jaroslaw actually explained, moving legacy systems into the cloud can be somewhat of a
leaving legacy and moving functionality, moving business to the cloud. This is what I really mean.
Okay, so I have a little case study on this where in the UK, without naming any names, essentially a financial institution over there had been transforming their own current system that way were essentially sitting on the service before. Due to COVID, they were going through transformation into the cloud. And which was insane about this is that when they were moving to the cloud, as they got essentially through with this and their CRM and everything needed to be restacked. But instead of dealing with digital transformation as per such, or let's say a digital migration of all of the data, they asked their over 10,000 customers to either come into the branch office and re-register themselves for digital banking new codes and stuff like that, or they would have to call in and be on the waiting line or send an email and everything like that. So essentially, each and every one of their customers had to re-register themselves to be a part of this financial institution, or let's say the services that are provided by this financial institution, which is insane. It's absolutely insane.
Piotr, any comment?
This is the time. And this is the times we're living in where we have digital onboarding, and you experiencing something like this. This is the best. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, one comment, Ian, about the cloud in FSI in Poland. So, big congratulations to the Polish banks which do the steps to the cloud. I think that all of the banks which I know use cloud, and I have in touch, we are in touch in terms of the Microsoft solution in the cloud, and everyone has this, but the challenge is with the core system. I mean, not yet. This is not yet. We just, I think, start the journey. Yeah, that's my comment.
Thank you. And I know that any discussion wouldn't be complete without touching the current post-pandemic situation. So I would like to ask Christy, what COVID-19 changed in providing financial services, or maybe what COVID-19 changed in the investors' behavior?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think if we look at kind of the first half of the pandemic, there was definitely a bit of a cool off from the venture capital side and like a turning more inwards to your portfolio companies, making sure they have the support or doing bridge rounds there. That's what we saw across kind of the venture capital world, but it recovered within just few months. And also the numbers that I touched upon previously, I mean, we've been hitting record numbers with, investments, new unicorn companies coming, new companies launching to the market overall. I think COVID, in a sense, put everyone into that kind of remote place of being on their self. So a lot of new business ideas hatched from that. So I think overall for venture capital, I think it was very fruitful. Unfortunate maybe to say because it was a tough year, but for venture it was quite good. And I think if you look at overall kind of the investment practices, before there was always this: you meet the team, you have few conversations face to face. Now most of the investments were done fully online, and that opened kind of the cross-border investment in a sense of we see more and more interest from Western funds and global funds in our small ecosystem, like in Estonia. Of course, there's other reasons why there's big interest there, but overall, in almost every investor that I've talked with is now looking at the Nordics, the CEE region, and that's basically because they see they don't need to physically be there to make those investments. And I think that's definitely a pivotal change and creates much more liquidity on the market.
Okay, thank you. And I'm afraid that we're running out of time, so just to sum up everything, I would like to ask each speaker, what is, in your opinion, the main challenge of digital transformation? Ian, could you start?
First of all, it's a decision to be made. It's the decision to be conducting digital transformation as per such. And oftentimes this is it's a difficult point because it's where oftentimes you cannot take a very leading position on the market and drive this new information, completely new things onto the market, and you have to kind of resort to following the trends as per such. But what I would perhaps like to comment on more, because we haven't touched that topic really today, is the notion of embedded finance, and hence not really the digital transformation side, because they're usually not really established companies today, so they don't need to transform, but there are a lot of greenfield players on the market as well, and especially in Europe and what's going on, and for that matter in Asia as well, there's quite a lot of companies moving on that side too. So what I would like to quickly pull into place, and perhaps into that would also, let's say, cover the topics of financial inclusions quite a bit. Also, what the post-pandemic trends are, for example, buy now, pay later. But I will instantly shut down that term, and say embedded finance, because it goes much further than just slicing up your payments over a course of time. I think on that side, it's a trend to be noticed. It's a trend to be keeping an eye on. And I would even say for the traditional financial sector players, it's a trend to be jumping on top of it as well, because it is the new way of, especially in post-pandemic times, you can see that the credit card payments gone down significantly. Your credit card interest rates, essentially for a year, we were talking about millions being missed out on behalf of the banks of the interest, potential interest that could have been grasped from this. And instead, people in the post-pandemic world, they go to the store and they get a 3-month slice payment, and that's as easy as it gets. So greenfield players are very important in that sort of sense, in my opinion.
Thank you very much, Christy.
Yeah, I think Ian already kind of touched upon kind of the challenges of digital transformation. Maybe thinking more towards fintech overall going forward. I think the main kind of challenges will be in having more access and inclusion in the space. Of course, compliance, I think, overall and regulatory, even though they're there to help, they're also creating quite high barriers to entry for the fintechs. Sorry. I'm like, and I think overall we need to look more at that. And of course, security and data privacy, when we go more online, this is going to be the main concern. I'm going to give away this microphone because I think we're out of time.
Jaroslaw, just a short comment, like 2 words.
Just yes. What's digital transformation? Cultural change. So we need to understand the purpose as financial institutions and we need to understand our customers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Piotr?
Openness to the change. So thank you very much.